One of the things that we included in our Forest Box for Kids is a series of nature journals. And every box, the introductory box has like three of them, but every box is going to have at least one or maybe two additional journals that children can use to begin to learn. And so this one's our tracking journal. We got right now in this first box, we have the birds, and we also have trees. And these really help you get started in learning, and they're very strategic in terms of helping students to learn, children to learn, because everything in life kind of comes down to how well we recognize details, and how well we can become aware of what's happening around us, so that we're not blindsided by things like, oh, I think my friend is lying to me, or hey, maybe I should get another job, or hey, I'm not really paying attention to the weather. Oh no, it's snowing and I slid off the road. Like, all of these things tie in. Almost everything that we have, that we see when people are struggling or suffering or having something unfortunate happen, oftentimes is due to a lack of awareness. And on top of that, there's also this benefit that when you are connected to the things around you, whether it's your family and nature, your community, the more aware you are, the more aware you become or get of opportunity. You get aware of the needs of the community, the needs of your partner, the needs of your family, your children. And so all of these things are tied to awareness. And the way that we teach that in our approach to building the inner foundation of a person, especially young people, is by teaching them about how to get connected to nature, because nature will offer you a window, a template, if you will, that then is easily, once you learn to do it with, say, birds and trees and plants and weather and tracking and so on, then it becomes much easier to apply that to your relationships, your job, your schoolwork, your studies, your career, whatever. So what I've done with the journals in our case is create ways that they could then repeatedly learn to create the routine of, oh, here's a tree, I don't know what it is. Let me look at the leaves. Let me observe very carefully about this in a way that I will remember, so that I can look that tree up and find out more about it, and what is distinctive about it that is different than all the other trees that I know of. How is it similar to many other trees that I know? After we do that, it's important to be able to then categorize that, and to begin to also learn to know, what questions do you want to ask while you're observing this tree. If you don't really do that, if I just point out to a child and say, oh, hey, Ricardo, what's that tree? Oh, that's a pig nut hickory. Hey, what's that one over there? Oh, that's a white ash. Hey, what's that tree over there? Oh, that's a hemlock. Rick, what's that tree? And I'm like, that's a pig nut hickory. The more you just give them the answers, the less work they have to do. And so what they learn is that they can just continually ask you, so that you become, if you're the one standing there, or me, I become basically synonymous with Google or Siri or something like that. And what I am trying to teach them is about how to take the Google and everything out of the picture, and to say, well, what is actually happening, and what questions should I be paying attention to right now, to ask the question, so that I can get deeper with what the answer is, so that I'll actually remember what it is, and I don't need Ricardo or Google or whatever, because I can figure it out on my own. And so the idea is to foster independence, and also to foster that awakening, that awareness. And that's true for whether you're studying birds, you're studying plants, trees, wilderness skills. Wilderness skills are great, because you're kind of like, hey, I'm trying to build a fire, but it keeps going out. Why? Why is it going out? What are the questions I need to ask? I once watched a group of boys who were working. They had these little boxes of matches, and everyone was working in teams of how to build a little teepee fire. And so, everybody around them was digging a hole, clearing the ground around it, making a little fire structure, and then lighting it with one match. And these two boys sat there. They built a nice looking fire. They did everything that looked really right. But they basically would take the box of matches. I think there's like 19 matches inside. And I watched them for about 15 minutes, and they would pull out a match. They go, "It's my turn," and they would take the match. They would light it, and then they would like shove it into the fire, shove it right into the thickest part of their tinder, and then the match would go out, and you'd see this little wisp of smoke kind of come out. And then the other child would go, give me the matches. You're doing it wrong." And then they would take it, and they would light it. They would light the match, very carefully. And then they would like take it and they would shove it in. And it might burn for a second longer, and then a little wisp of smoke, and then it would go out. And then the other one would say, no, it's my turn. Give it to me. And they went back and forth. And I watched them use every single match in that box. And, humorous to me, because I'm standing there and I'm like, I can make a fire. No, it's no big deal. And I knew what they were doing wrong. And so they finally, at one point, they came out, they ran out of matches. They came over and they said, Ricardo. And I was like excited because I was hoping that they were going to say, can you help us? Can you tell us what we're doing wrong? And guess what they said instead? I'll give you one guess. And that guess is they just said, can I have more matches? And I said, well, no. Can you tell me how many matches you used? And they said, I don't know. I did a bunch and he did a bunch. And I'm like, why is it going out? And they were like, I never thought of that. I never thought to ask, why is it not working? And so it was really cool because I was like, well, so then I took them through that process. I said, well, what does a match need, or what does a fire need? And I had already told this to the group, but I asked them, what does a fire need to survive? And they said, well, it needs, oxygen, it needs fuel, and it needs heat. And I said, all right, so what's happening? So we problem solved, and eventually they got on their way, and they ended up making a fire. And hopefully they have learned that lesson really well. But it helped me to understand that it's not just about memorizing a process. It's really about learning to pay attention to and observe very detailed in a way that lets you kind of question what's your assumption? Why is something not working? And ideally, you would want, if you were in a wilderness survival situation, you would want to learn that after you did your first or second match and it went out. You wouldn't use all your matches and then start trying to think about it. So anyway, luckily, this wasn't that situation, and it was fun, and also it helped me learn how they're learning. So the journals are really important because this is really the key to them developing this skill of critical thinking and problem solving, and learning about being able to expand their world outside of their own kind of perspective. Whether, I know everybody picks on screens a lot, and rightfully so, but we do get stuck in a kind of a pattern of, what is it that we're aware of, what's in our world. And that's why, new situations that show up, like the pandemic, or, when something happens like Black Lives Matter, or another political situation comes in, or, whatever it is that's new that kind of thrusts into our world or expands our world, it allows us time to then say, oh, okay, so what's happening here? Why is this so important? How is this going to affect me? How can I change this? How can I adapt? And if you can get good working knowledge and have good observations and ask good questions, you're going to find a way to thrive in the new situation and adapt. And so that's the skill that we're building with these journals. And I'm also trying to include some puzzles and stories to make it fun. So that's why we put that in there. This is just an example of why it's so important for me to do this Forest Box for Kids and to get it out to as many kids as I can. So thank you.